welcome back to the On the Grid podcast. Now we have a little bit of a different episode lined up today. There is no racing. We have to entertain ourselves. We have to try and find something to talk about. So today we are talking about our top 10 drivers of the 21st century. Now, just to put out a disclaimer, first of all, this is our opinion. You know, you're all entitled to your own opinions. And you know what? If you want to send in your top tens to our Twitter at OnTheGrid Podcast, I believe it is, then feel free. We would look forward to seeing those. See what your top tens look like. If they differ from us, if they're the same, who knows? But joining me on today's podcast is none other than Adrian Kita. How are you, Adrian?
I'm good. It's strange / very weird not to be doing a preview / review of a race. It's our first one this season where we kind of got a break, a kind of a long break. Then the next break, I believe, will be in the summer break, essentially, where we're going to have a massive gap. There might be gaps of 1 or 2 weeks in between other races, but yeah, we're entertaining ourselves by doing a top 10. Once again, I'm going to repeat what Ethan said. Our opinion, solely our opinion. If you disagree with it, you agree with it, happy days. But make sure to obviously comment your own and don't give us hate, just give us a few pointers. Maybe we missed this driver out. Maybe we missed this driver out. Yeah, it should be a fun episode, I think. Let's get straight into the top 10. A very fun one, indeed.
Most definitely. I tell you what, why don't you kick things off? Give us your number 10. We'll go 10 to 1.
Okay, so my number 10 driver currently doesn't have a seat on the grid. Currently, he's a reserve driver at one of the teams that kind of built his career. For number 10, I've gone with Mr. Daniel Ricciardo. I've put him down as a 10 purely on the basis of some of the people that I have on the list in front of me, 9 downwards, are champions in their own respect, and obviously key cogs to, I think, the 21st century of Formula One. So I've gone with Daniel Ricciardo at 10. I think his time at Red Bull kind of speaks for itself. I've only got a few stats here, but 3 pole positions, 8 wins, 32 podiums. But I think those stats kind of give him a bit of injustice throughout his time at Red Bull, and obviously he got a couple of podiums at Renault as well. McLaren wasn't the best stint for him career wise. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo for me, number 10, very prominent in the 2010s. Obviously finished his career, he put his career on hold, should I say, hopefully with a view to find a seat next season. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo for me, number 10.
Very interesting. Now, if this was our top 10 favourite drivers of all time, then he would definitely be in my top 5. He is one of my honourable mentions, but I couldn't quite put him in. So for number 10, I went Rubens Barrichello. So in the 21st century, negating for how he done in the 90s. So he competed for 12 seasons, 11 wins and 62 podiums for Rubens Barrichello. Now, he was probably the perfect number 2. He was at Ferrari during that Michael Schumacher dominance era. And he wasn't there to compete with Schumacher. I think that was very evident to a lot of people, especially with a few of the races with a lot of controversy that went on. But what he done was the perfect number 2 driver. And yeah, I don't have too much more to say, but yeah, I think Rubens Barrichello really went under the radar. Maybe during the 2009 season, he could have established himself as the number 1 driver, where Jenson Button won. But as it is, he's got a number of wins, a lot of podiums actually, more than I think five or six others in my top 10. So yeah, that's who I've gone for as number 10, Rubens Barrichello. Do you want to give me your number 9 now, Adrian?
So moving on to ninth spot, incidentally, I've gone with his teammate from the 2009 season, Jenson Button. I've put him at 9, purely on the basis I think that 2009 season, I think, kind of shaped Jenson Button's career as a whole. Obviously, he had that very honourable stint at McLaren alongside Lewis Hamilton, and then obviously the Brawn GP season was where he came to light and won that season, and that's his only world championship to note. But like I say, 17 seasons in the sport from 2000 to 2017, so 17-18 seasons we're looking at there. Very, very good driver. One of my favourite drivers on the grid, actually, in the late 2000s. And yeah, a very, very good driver in his own. So yeah, I put him at number 9. And you mentioned Rubens Barrichello at number 10. I've actually got him down as an honourable mention. I don't have him in my top 10 at all. But yeah, Rubens, I think, fantastic driver. I'm going to touch upon Rubens a little bit here. But yeah, like you say, perfect number 2 for Michael Schumacher. And then if he maybe established himself as the number 1 at Brawn GP in 2009, maybe that season could have propelled him even further up the rankings. But he's an honourable mention for me. Jenson Button is my number 9.
I won't talk too much about Jenson Button because I've got him a little bit higher on this list. For number 9, I've gone for Mark Webber. You know, he was quite unlucky during his time at Red Bull. He got 9 wins and 42 podiums. He almost had that world title in 2010. He was agonizingly close. It looked like he was the favourite going into that last race of the season at Abu Dhabi. Everyone thought it was going to be Webber versus Alonso for the title, and then Vettel came out of nowhere and won. And I think if he got that title, he would have established himself as the number 1 driver there at Red Bull. And then in the subsequent seasons where we saw that Vettel dominance, maybe he would have been a little bit closer. I wonder how much of a psychological impact that had. But we'll talk about Rubens Barrichello as being the perfect number 2. Webber was right up there. Obviously, him and Vettel had their spats. I think it was Malaysia 2011 or 2012 that comes to mind. But other than that, you know, he was a fantastic driver. And yeah, again, another blast from the past, as you like to say. 12 seasons in F1, 215 races. So yeah, Mark Webber at number 9 for me. And then I'll give you my number 8. So all of my top 8 now are the 8 world champions in the 21st century. So at number 8, bottom of this list, I've gone Nico Rosberg, 23 wins, 57 podiums. Obviously, that 1 world championship. The thing that I think separates Rosberg for me from the drivers ahead of this list is that longevity. Other than one who is in a league of his own at the minute. Any guesses for who that is? They've all been in the sport for 15, 20 years, but Rosberg didn't really have that longevity. I think he kind of knew in 2016, he's come out and said actually that winning that title against Lewis Hamilton was the toughest thing he's had to do. And he just couldn't keep on going after that. So he did get quite lucky in that season, not to take that away from him. But, you know, when we talk about, as we said, the longevity, I think he just falls short of the rest. So how about you, Adrian? What did you get for number 8?
So for number 8, incidentally, I've not put Rosberg on my list. He's not made my list. We were incidentally debating this just before we recorded a few days before. Obviously we created and curated our list, and for me, Rosberg doesn't make the cut. I simply purely on longevity, and purely on the basis that I think that one season, once again, I think for him, um, it was kind of the breakthrough season to battle Lewis Hamilton and to win that championship was a remarkable feat in its own. But he doesn't make my list of all time. For number eight, I've gone with Felipe Massa. Yet again, I think Massa was a very, very underrated driver. Obviously, he paired up with Michael Schumacher for 2 or so years, I believe, in the Ferrari days, early Ferrari days. And I think he narrowly obviously missed out on that 2008 championship, which everybody continues to speculate about whether he should be getting or not. I've seen so many people talk about it on social media regarding whether Lewis Hamilton should now be just a six-time world champion. Um, but yeah, he shouldn't be. But yeah, Felipe Massa, once again, it just screams longevity. Obviously, he had that stint in 2002, and then from 2004 to 2017, he was obviously at Ferrari, and then at Williams, he did very well at Williams during their glory. Resurgence, should we say, in the mid 2010s. Stats: 16 poles, 11 wins, 41 podiums. Maybe not screaming the likes of Rubens Barrichello, and Mark Webber there. But I just think Felipe Massa, should I say, obviously a very likable face in the paddock, a very good driver, and yeah, for me, number eight spot. And then I think I'll move on to number seven as well for me. Keeping it rolling. I've got in seven and six, I've got two Finns. In number seven, I've got Valtteri Bottas. I think VB. Yes, I see your face. I see your face. Right, catch me drift. We talk about number two drivers. Your Webbers, your Rubens Barrichellos, your Felipe Massas as well. But what I think Valtteri Bottas has done perfectly here, especially at Mercedes, he obviously helped Lewis Hamilton a lot. But going even previous to his Williams days, where he started out in Formula One, and obviously was kind of a shining star for that Williams outfit, kind of put his name on the map alongside Felipe Massa, and kind of rose to stardom with Mercedes, and kind of didn't get the glory that he should have and could have if Lewis Hamilton wasn't fighting for them championships. But for me, I think seventh place for Valtteri Bottas. He's still kicking about with Alfa Romeo, not doing as well as he would be hoping at this stage of his season. But I think he's still got a lot to give to the sport, and I think if Alfa Romeo can string some results together, I think that their outfit will be good, especially with the experience and the know-how of Valtteri Bottas. But that's my number seven and my number eight sorted.
Are you trying to tell me you've put Massa and Bottas ahead of Jenson Button?
Yes, I have. Right. Okay. I know we're gonna agree to disagree, but obviously with you being more of a Brit than I am, I think your coverage and your focus was probably in the late 2000s, was more based on your British drivers, so your Lewis Hamilton, your Jenson Button. Those two were the pride of Britain at that time. Um, and for me, um, obviously being a Ferrari fan, I think Felipe Massa has been a huge part to our history. Obviously, like I say, missed out on the championship in 2008 after is that Glock going slowly? Yeah, it repeats in my head time and time again. Because we could have obviously had back-to-back world champions in Kimi Raikkonen, who features in my list, and Felipe Massa. But yeah, I just think for me, Jenson Button, I've always liked him as a driver, but I think that 2009 season was just the pinnacle for him. I think Massa's had a few other seasons where he's been in and around, obviously Ferrari dominant car in the early 2000s, and he was there for me with Schumacher, obviously those two working as a partnership. So yeah, I think for me, Button lower down my list, but I think I'm not disagreeing with you that he's a fantastic driver because obviously all of these drivers on the list are our all-time favourites and the all-time bests. But I think for me, Valtteri and Felipe, I think just edge it. I think 7, 8, and 9 are very tight, but I put them in that order. I know I put a world champion down in ninth. Oh no, kill me. I've not put Nico Rosberg on the list. Oh no, kill me. My opinion.
Interesting. Okay. I would just like to say I put Massa and Bottas as honourable mentions. I didn't think they quite made the cut. Seventh, decided to go for Jenson Button. 15 race wins, 50 podiums, and that world championship, of course, in 2009. I think those stats are a little bit misleading. I think in this day and age, he would be looking towards sort of 20 to 30 plus wins. That 2009 season, obviously, that Brawn was fantastic. And then towards the end of the season, it wasn't. It was the second quickest car come the end of the season. The Red Bull had caught up and overtaken it by that point. But Jenson Button is one of 3 drivers to beat his teammate, to beat Lewis Hamilton as a teammate over the course of the season. The others 2 being Nico Rosberg, obviously in 2016, and George Russell last year. Second in the championship in 2011. And overall, just a mainstay on the Formula One grid. 17 seasons, 306 races. I think he's in the top 5 for the most races of all time as a Formula One driver. That's all I can say really. Jenson Button, when I first got into Formula One in those early 2000s, was actually my favourite driver. No, I'm a big Lewis Hamilton fan and was back then as well. But Jenson Button was always the number 1 driver for me. So that may influence it a little bit. But I have got him at 7. I think that's fair. I did have to judge it basically where if you have a world championship, that automatically puts you in the top 10 for me personally. But we'll have to agree to disagree there. And number 6, I've gone for a current driver, a 2-time world champion. I've gone for Max Verstappen. He's torn he looks like he's going to tear every record up in the book. He's got 37 wins, 80 podiums, and obviously 2 world championships. And he's only been driving for 9 seasons. This is very scary to see what he can do. Obviously, there's more races this season, as we've discussed. But yeah, Max Verstappen, as much as it pains me to say, a fantastic driver, was more than dominated the season last year. Got 15 wins, the most in the season. I don't have him higher again because I think the top 5 are better drivers. Maybe if you put them all in their prime, I would love to see that. I would be very interested to see how that played out. But I think the other 5 just edged it for me. So yeah, Max was up in P6, as much as it pains me to say.
The thing is, incidentally, I've also put Max Verstappen at number 6. I was conflicting myself whether to put him at number 6 or number 5, but I've settled him as number 6. Because I think purely on the basis of the longevity and the amount of races, the other 5 drivers higher up on this list have competed in, and their overall just know-how and experience. I think they all trump Max Verstappen in that. but it is very scary knowing that Max has got 37 wins in nine or so seasons already. Obviously, I believe he's got the same amount of podiums as Ayrton Senna, who's seventh on the list, which is frightening. Obviously, top of the list is Sir Lewis Hamilton with 192. So he's got a fair way to catch up Lewis Hamilton, but I don't think Lewis Hamilton's got many seasons left in his illustrious Formula One career. So, but saying that, Max could retire after two or three. You never know. He did come out in an interview saying that he doesn't know whether he's going to continue his Formula One career in his 30s, like some drivers have, like Lewis Hamilton, like many other drivers have. So yeah, it is frightening, but Max Verstappen is my number 6 pick.
So one that we've actually agreed on. That's I think that's the first one we've agreed on. Move on to number 5. I've gone for Kimi Räikkönen. 21 wins, 103 podiums, 1 world championship, 19 seasons he's competed in, and up until last year held the record with 349 races. I've given the edge to Räikkönen over Verstappen because of that longevity, because of how on his day he was just an exceptional talent. He almost bankrupted Lotus in 2012, which is a very funny story. Sebastian Vettel has called him the most naturally gifted Formula One driver we've ever seen. So for not bad praise from a 4-time world champion. And yeah, I think if things had gone slightly differently for him, he could have ended up with a few more world championships quite easily. How he got sacked from Ferrari at the end of 2009, I think it was, is atrocious. And then came back where everyone thought he was done. He came back with Lotus, finished third in the Drivers' Championship in 2012, got that move back to Ferrari, picked up a few more wins, and then went to Alfa Romeo for the twilight of his career. And yeah, for me, fifth best driver of the 21st century. I think that's about fair.
Another one we've agreed on. Kimi is also my number 5. The thing with Kimi, yet again, another Ferrari driver, so he holds a place close to my heart once again. Like you said, his sacking in 2009 was absolutely disgraceful in my opinion. It should not have happened because, like you mentioned, drivers up and down the paddock have testified that he was on his day one of the most naturally gifted Formula One drivers ever. Fact, full stop. He could have done it all. Like you said at Lotus, he finished third, and you're thinking that Lotus car is it going to challenge? I believe he had. I can't remember who he had as a teammate. Was it Vitaly Petrov back in 2012?
I think it was Grosjean,
or it might have been Grosjean. It was one of them two. But what he did with that Lotus and got his move back to Ferrari was fantastic to see. And then obviously his career, he rallied on. Obviously had 9 or so seasons from 2012 to 2021. Like you rattled off the stats there. He could have had more world championships. He could have, and he should have had more championships. I think he deserved so many, at least 2 or 3, in my opinion, if everything came together for him. But he had to stay with that one, which I think, nevertheless, puts a massive stamp on his name. Obviously, having over a century of podiums as well. Could have and should have had more race wins in his career, but once again, fantastic step into Formula One. I think propelled Formula One in Finland with his name, and a fantastic champion in his own right. So yeah, Kimi Räikkönen for me, number 5 spot on my list.
Yeah, I think he's one of those drivers that even if he didn't have that world championship, he would still be in the top 10. I think he was that much of an icon in Formula One. Moving on to the 4th. Now, I don't know whether this is a little bit controversial. I've gone for Sebastian Vettel. At number 4. I do have reasoning. I think 3rd and 4th are very close. I can see the disappointment.
No, I'm calling fraud watch. Are you okay? This is on the limit of me putting Jenson Button at 9th. You're putting a 4-time world champion at 4th.
Okay. I'll give my 3rd place as well, because I think I can give an explanation. I've gone for Fernando Alonso 3rd. So Vettel, 53 wins, 122 podiums, 4 world championships. Alonso, 32 wins, 101 podiums, 2 world championships. All the stats point towards Vettel being ahead of Alonso. I just feel like Fernando Alonso is the better driver of the two. I don't think you look at some of the cars Fernando Alonso has had to drive over the years. The Ferrari in 2010 was an absolute tractor. It was if he had won the title, it would have been the worst ever car to win a world championship. I think if you put I think one of the cars in the 50s or the 60s would have been quicker than that Ferrari. That's how bad it was. And he dragged it along through the mud to miss out on a world championship by a few points. And then again in 2012, the exact same happened. I don't think if you put Vettel in that situation, I don't think he could have done it. Not taking anything away from either two drivers. They're both fantastic drivers. They're 3rd and 4th, possibly of all time. But yeah, for me, I think Alonso slightly edges it because of his racecraft, because of his just sheer will and determination. We've seen that this year. You know, we've seen in the past about how Alonso has kind of come out with some very entertaining comments in the races where, you know, maybe he doesn't have a car as good as he wants. Back to the McLaren days. And then this year, he's got a good car underneath him. And you just see that attitude change and how happy and how determined he is to get as many points, as many podiums as he can. And I think he could well end up with a win or two this season. Fernando Alonso. I would have loved to see these two drivers pair up at Aston Martin this season. I think we all would. But yeah, for me, personally, I'm sure you're going to disagree. I'm sure you're going to go into a 10-minute rant here about why Vettel should be higher. But yeah, for me, Fernando Alonso slightly edges Vettel.
So everybody now knows who I've got in 3rd and 4th. In 3rd, I've got Seb Vettel. In 4th, I've got Fernando Alonso. And I'm not going to go into a 10-minute rant because Brad, the editor, would kill me if I went into a 10-minute rant regarding which was the better driver. But it's hard. It is really, really hard distinguishing between the two drivers. Are you still there? Cool. Okay, I'm going to continue. Right. So for me, it's really hard to distinguish between the two drivers. Like you said, both of them fantastic in their own right. But for me, Sebastian Vettel, those dominant days between obviously 2010, 2014, that 4 world championships back to back to back to back. I think that just does it for Seb Vettel. That gives him the edge of obviously being so dominant in those 4 years, and obviously bringing Red Bull the glory that they kind of craved for and were kind of hoping for. Obviously, both drivers, longevity wise, obviously Fernando beats Vettel in my opinion. Obviously, Fernando has had a bit of a break in between here and there. Obviously, 2001, then he came back in 2003 to 2018, had a bit of a break, and returned in 2021, and he's currently back on the grid. With Seb, he started out in 2007 he tested for BMW Sauber, and obviously he joined the Red Bull system, etc., etc. You know the rest, you know the drill. But yeah, it is tight between Fernando and Seb, but I think purely on the basis of just those four championships, the racecraft, because I think Seb is prone to mistakes. We saw where was it? The German Grand Prix, one of the years where obviously he crashed out of a race and obviously lost out on the race victory in that one, which kind of gave Lewis Hamilton the upper hand in the championship. I think he's prone to mistakes, especially during his latter years in Formula One. But I think those four championships, those four fantastic years at Red Bull, shaped his career as a whole, and I think he goes down as an icon and earns the bronze medal in my rankings. But Sebastian Vettel, number 3, Fernando Alonso, number 4.
Okay, now moving on to our top two. Now, I think this could be a topic of a lot of disagreement here. So first and second. Now, I've gone Lewis Hamilton first, Michael Schumacher second. Let me list my reasoning. So this is for the 21st century. This is not overall. This is not of all time. This is for the 21st century alone. I can understand the argument for Michael Schumacher first if it's a for all time argument. However, this is for the 21st century, and I think it should be judged as such. Therefore, world titles, Hamilton's 7 to Michael Schumacher's 5. Wins, Hamilton 103, Michael Schumacher 56. Podiums, Hamilton 192, Schumacher 84. And need I say any more? Double the wins, double the podiums. To be fair, Michael Schumacher was past his best when he came back in 2010, and then as well in 2005 and 2006. I think Alonso burst onto the scene. The Ferrari wasn't the best. So you've got those 5 years. Obviously, he won 5 on the bounce. But Hamilton, apart from that, in the 21st century, there's nothing else. If luck had gone a different way for Hamilton, he could have easily had the title in 2007. If the luck had gone his way, he could have easily had the title in 2016 and should have had the title in 2021. If he had had the luck go his way, Lewis Hamilton could be a 10-time world champion right now. I'll let you respond because I can see the look you're giving me. But I think based on the 21st century alone, I think there's only one winner.
You were talking a hell of a lot about luck there. A hell of a lot about luck. Michael, you just mentioned luck for 2007, 2016, 2021. Right. I'm not going to talk about 2021 because that was a debate in itself 1.5 years ago, and I don't want to go into depth about that debate because there's no debate about it. It is what it is. Whatever happened, happened, right? Okay. Michael Schumacher. I think we talk about the dominance of his 2002 season, the dominance of his 2004 season. Yes, he was past his prime when he came back in the 2010s, etc. But man, Michael Schumacher, Lewis Hamilton, everybody's going to have that debate regardless. No matter what, the debate is going to be there, and we've just caused a colossal of a clash happening. For me, hand on heart, you're obviously a massive, massive Lewis Hamilton fan. Me, I've got Michael Schumacher close to my heart, Ferrari links, etc. He's going to be close to my heart. My debate being, I think back in those days, obviously Michael Schumacher absolutely dominated the 2002 season. The 2004 season only saw him retire from one race, and most of that season saw him stand on the top step of a podium, apart from in Belgium, Italy, China, where he finished 12th, and in Brazil, where he finished 7th. Um, Obviously, everybody's going to have differences. I'm not denying that Lewis Hamilton has not put the 21st century by storm. He's obviously broken all of Michael Schumacher's records, and Michael Schumacher even put it out there. Records are meant to be broken, and I don't deny that Lewis Hamilton has done that. He's absolutely obliterated that. But but records are going to be there to come and go. Someday, one day or another, Lewis Hamilton's records are going to go, whether it be Max Verstappen or it be someone else. But for me personally, I just think Michael Schumacher, what he did in the early 2000s, winning those 5 championships, for me, better feat than Lewis Hamilton winning the 7. Obviously his were more spaced out. And obviously, like I say, with Seb, he won four in a row, and I put him at number 3 ahead of Fernando. And I think the 5 in a row for Mr. Schumacher just inch it ever so slightly ahead of Hamilton. We're going to agree to disagree. They're both fantastic, and I'm not going to deny that Lewis Hamilton, a brilliant, brilliant driver, and yeah, maybe if luck was on his side, maybe he could be a 10-time world champion by now, and maybe he could see me talking about Lewis Hamilton being top of my list. But for me personally, I just think Michael Schumacher edges it out ever so slightly. And obviously, both of them, when they were in the twilights of their career, now, obviously, we saw last season what happened to Hamilton. Similar was obviously happening to Michael Schumacher. He obviously finished 9th upon his return in 2010. 2011 was an 8th place finish, and then in 2013 was a 13th place finish, and then he retired. He called it quits. So we're going to agree to disagree. I'm placing Michael Schumacher at the top of my list purely on the basis of that 5-time. 5-time. He's a 7-time. He's the same as Lewis Hamilton, but we're not counting the Benetton days, unfortunately, because we're talking purely on the basis of 21st century. But yeah, Michael Schumacher for me edges it out ever so slightly. That's my argument. I don't think we need to have any more arguments because I think we're going to agree to disagree. Number 1 and 2 are very tight, but personal preference for me, Michael Schumacher tops it for me.
They are very tight, and I can completely understand where you're coming from. If it was of all time, I think in the 21st century, Hamilton has got those 2 extra world championships. You say about the 5 in a row. Hamilton done 6 and 7. So, and, could have been 8 and 8, but I'm not going to get into that because I could be here for days talking about that. So yeah, the 6 and 7 got very close with the other 2, but I feel personally, I know you disagree, that especially when we're talking about the 21st century, overall, I still do believe that Hamilton is a better driver, but that's especially the case when we're only taking into account their feats in the 21st century. With Michael Schumacher, it is very hard to do that because obviously he had sort of 6 or 7 years before that. At Benetton, he had the early years at Ferrari where he almost won a couple of titles. But yeah, purely on the basis of the 21st century, I think Hamilton has also had a longer time in F1 in this century, so that's why he edges it for me. But like you said, we won't continue to go into it because we could be back and forth here all evening. So that is where we will wrap up this episode of On the Grid Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this special episode, doing something a little bit different. and we'll be back next week for something else. We'll wait to see what that is going to be. But until the
We'll
next
figure
episode,
something out. We'll
we'll
figure
figure
something
something out.
out.
We've got
But
time to kill before Baku.
I'm just gonna drop in here before we end off the podcast. Obviously the list once again is respective to mine and Ethan's opinions. Don't be butthurt if we've not put your favorite driver of the 21st century in here. Just purely on our basis, and you guys have got to agree to disagree in the comments, and I've got to give your thoughts and opinions, especially on our Twitter, on our Instagram, etc. But yeah, like Ethan said, we've got about a week to think about what we're doing in the next episode. It might be a fun quiz. You never know. I might think of something wacky up for the next episode. But yeah, until then, we've got a hell of a lot of time still to kill, don't we, Ethan?
Yes, yeah, we do. We've got another 2 weeks until Baku. It couldn't go any slower, it feels like. But yeah, that is it for today's episode. As we said, send over your link, your top tens. I think the link to the Twitter should be in the episode description. And we will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.